Hello, and welcome to Safe Space. My name is Chris Edwards, and I am your host. Every week, I try to bring to you a new and inspiring guest that will talk about their experience and their journey as a LGBTQIA plus member and of Caribbean descent. Today, I've got a very special guest. Not only is a friend of mine, but he can speak directly to this. He is a PhD candidate at the University, at Howard University, and he has very insightful takes and looks on what it means to be an LGBTQIA member in the Caribbean community. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Reginald Nash. Rex, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You look amazing. I love the red shirt, my friend.
Well, we do what we can.
Yes. So, you're getting your PhD. You're a PhD candidate, and you're at Howard University, and you are actually your focus of study is Black fat gay bodies in fiction, with a special interest in Caribbean and Black British literature. Okay, let's just kind of break that down a little bit, and then also, how did you get into that field of study?
By being black, fat, and gay, child. It's funny. I say that flippantly, but it's really true. I think one of the things that you learn early on as a researcher is to focus on things that interest you. And a lot of times that is centered around your lived experiences, or maybe if you have or are a part of a community that has a marginalized identity, I think it can really thrust you into a specific field of interest. And I think it was at the top of my mind when I started my PhD journey, just because a lot of the things that we study, that I have studied along the way for my first couple of degrees, like it just didn't ever center people who looked or felt like me. Or so I just wonder, like, with the wide reading that I've done in this particular genre, like, where are the people like me? And so and when they are there, it's kind of not in their full capacity. So I think it gave me like the desire to kind of search more, find out more, kind of try to think through critically why that, the landscape of identities looked the way that it did.
Okay. Now, one of the things that because we had this conversation, it's ongoing conversation. We actually had a conversation the day before this recording, in regards to all right, you're not of Caribbean descent,
Right.
Or heritage, but you have like that Southern background, which has a lot of ties to Caribbean roots. So, talk about the connection between those two and how they parallel one another.
Oh, okay. So both sides of my family are from Louisiana, and people, when you say Louisiana, you automatically think about the very wide variety of Black people that you get in the American South. And people from Louisiana can be a variety of shades, a variety of ethnicities, even when they identify as being African American, right? And so, because of the way that the trajectory of the South experienced colonization and settlement and being ruled, specifically Louisiana being ruled under multiple countries, it created a kind of well-known process that is very highly spoken about in the Caribbean called creolization. And the theory of creolization is to really thinking about the mixtures of foundational institutions and cultures, how they come together to form a unique identity. And Louisiana, specifically in the South, is kind of a place where you see that happen most often. And so, because I've grown up with that sort of culture and that sort of understanding of things not having to fit neatly into categories or boxes, it really appealed to me when I began to encounter Caribbean fiction. And so when you add Black British to that, it's really a lot of the same thing, because when you think about the people who inhabit Britain and identify with Black identities, they also will have other identities, whether that be West African or Trinidadian or Jamaican or any Caribbean, South American, other than identifying as solely European.
Okay. So, in your studies, especially over the last several years being in this PhD program, can you talk specifically in regards to Caribbean culture and what your research has entailed in that respect?
It's really been a challenge, and I'm going to tell you why. It's a challenge because even in this day and age, I don't think that a lot of Caribbean cultures are really big about speaking publicly about LGBT identities. And so, what I found is when you see characters in fiction or when you read about it in nonfiction publications, people who are well known to be LGBT never really discuss it in their work. I don't know if they feel like that part of their life is irrelevant to their existence or their experience. I don't really understand how it could be, but that's sort of the dynamic that you see in those writings. And so what I found is it's a real challenge to kind of access LGBT identities in general, not to mention thinking about how LGBT identities of fat people would be represented in that space as well. And so it's really created sort of this gap in acad- um, academic research as well
Mhm.
as just in culture in general to be able to really explore those people's lives and how they show up in different in that culture.
Yeah, I would have to totally agree with you 100% on that note. In me doing this show, I've come across some of the similar challenges. It's really difficult to find people who are willing to really come forward and speak on it. I didn't realize it was going to be this hard, but it's been a challenge. But I think that one, there are people out there and they're
Yeah.
willing, hopefully they're willing to tell their stories. But I think that being able to have this conversation with you and to talk about it a little bit more in depth will hopefully spark interest and invite more people to open up about the conversation. Caribbean culture is very steep in tradition and religion, and they tend not to veer very far off that path. A lot of Caribbeans, especially just even like I know from myself and my family, I grew up very religious, very strict. This is how you live your life, and you don't deviate from that path. It's just about getting the work done. You don't try to stir up the waters or anything like that. So it can be really difficult. So I totally understand where you're coming from when it comes to finding content and the necessary research to really fully explore Caribbean culture and with respects to LGBTQIA issues.
Right. And it's really the problem is really multifaceted as far as representation is concerned. If you think about American culture, literature, film, media in general, right? Um, you don't see a heavy representation of Black bodies first, right? And so once you begin to see
Mhm.
more of those, then you say, okay, of these Black people, which ones of them are showing up as LGBT, right? Okay, that's an even smaller population. And then if you're talking about men's bodies, which very little work in the academic space specific to my journey has been done, and we've just reached a point maybe within the past 5 years where we started to have real conversations about like body positivity and what it means to be inclusive. We still don't have an inclusive landscape for even simple necessities as far as like travel and clothing and options for romantic partners, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
what I've found is that when you think about all these different stops along the way that consist of, the components of multiple aspects of a singular identity, it really just kind of makes you wonder, okay, yeah, okay, maybe there aren't as many people as there would be overall, right? Maybe representation is based on the population of the people that exist in the space. However, we often see very small small groups of people represented in a very big way, right? So
Mhm.
I would like to, first of all, being overweight is not a small percentage of people. It's when you add the other identities that, and really hate the term overweight, but it's when you add the other identities to it that it begins to, dwindle down maybe the population. And so when I'm thinking through this specifically for like trying to access images and trying to think about how you would propel this group of people into a space where their identities are normalized, accepted, and valued in the ways that other people who automatically garner that sort of acceptance, it creates a challenge for communicating it or thinking about how to reference work that's been done. And our culture hates fat people is what it boils
Yeah.
down to.
So, you touched on something that's a little bit that is very personal to you. And one of the things that I like to highlight on this particular show is that people's journeys and where they've come from and how they've come to accept themselves and not really worry about what society thinks. Talk a little bit about your journey and how you've come to this point in your life and accepting yourself, and then also how that's articulated in how you live your life, the type of research that you do, and why it is you do what you do.
Well, so we talked a lot about in the beginning about writing and researching and thinking about things that you are familiar with or that are important to you. I've always been a large person, and I've even come to the conclusion that had I not had a struggle with, managing an ideal weight according to social standards,
Mhm.
that I would be a big person regardless. I'm 6'5". So it's like there was no way for me to be like average as far as my body representation is concerned. And so I went through all the different diets. I've done very harmful things as far as, trying to be healthier and smaller. Went through a period where I was severely depressed about, being able to is show up in public and feel proud of myself, and just that not being accessible for me. I struggle with finding clothes. I think that it had a tremendous impact on like my self-worth and how I really felt about um, being valuable. And so as I aged and began to think about these things, it made me wonder like where are these messages coming from? Why do I feel like this? Why do I have this struggle? And I just continue to look for answers. And I still don't know that I have answers that I like or that I want to accept, which is why I continue to try to work in the space to try to provide some sort of insight or some way of framing what exists, but also highlighting the possibilities of what could exist for people like me.
Mhm.
And so being a larger person on top of being Black, and not just being Black, but being a dark skinned Black, makes it very difficult for me to access mainstream beauty, right?
Mhm.
And being fat adds to that complication. And then being a gay man further adds to that complication. And not just in the ways that you would think, right? It's not just that, okay, my sexuality is not what is considered standard or normal, but even within spaces that are distinctly LGBT spaces, being fat, being dark skinned, and not being what people would consider traditionally masculine just continues to compound those complications. And so if you don't have a real like solid handle on who you are as a person, what you believe in, and really have a good firm belief in your own personal value, it can really send you into a very dark place.
So let me ask you this: how have you overcome those struggles? I know you did mention that you're still going through the process and to find solutions, but like, I mean, you've made it this far.
Yeah.
For those that don't know who haven't seen us on other shows, 'cause in full disclosure, Rex and I do work on other projects. We have the conference call that's on YouTube, and I've interviewed him for my other show on Indie Network, Take Two. We do a lot of things together, and I know the background, but I want you to kind of let people know, how does you've become comfortable with yourself, because you've had quite a journey to get to
Yeah.
this space.
Yeah, because I started out very, very deeply closeted, but I think that's a typical story for Black gay men from the South who come from religious families. Um, But after I was divorced and I began to experience different levels of freedom, I think little by little I came into my own. I didn't even recognize that there was an issue with some things until I started to inhabit spaces that were, designated as LGBT spaces, or being around groups of people who identified in that way. And the more that I surrounded myself with those people, I started to recognize that, damn, there's an additional challenge. Here's something else that I hadn't accounted for. I thought the challenge was just being gay. But once you're out of the closet or inviting people into your life story, like, that challenge subsides, but then there are other challenges. And so I really just came to recognize that with any time you're dealing with people who don't know you or don't care about what you have going on, which is most people, unless you have a personal connection with them. And that's fine, right? But you have to recognize that there are always going to exist this kind of challenge that you have to overcome, what their thoughts or what their traditional notions are, what they expect, because people put their expectations on you. But I think the most freeing thing that I've ever recognized for myself was that I don't necessarily have to live up to those expectations, like, and to just really insist on being my full authentic self in spaces regardless of the outcome, because I can't do anything different. Like, I have to do that. Like,
Yeah.
there's no alternative, right?
Yeah. So, I want to mention this because I don't even know if how aware you are of this fact, but we met in 2020 during the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that was extremely helpful to me was our friendship. Because I think that we were kind of going through a similar thing at the same time, and we were able to lean on one another to, quote unquote, become our authentic selves, and just, not to say, and I hate using the word not care, but not really putting an emphasis on what people thought of us, and just allowing ourselves to be ourselves, and to be in spaces with everyone else without fear. The conversations that you and I had were very helpful to me, and I hope that the conversations that we had were helpful to you as well.
Absolutely.
Because I remember us even having discussions about the fact that, we had planned on doing just a lot of different things and working together, and the fact that we were going to do the conference call and we were going to do it with TJ, and TJ is very outspoken. TJ has been very outspoken since very early on. We call him baby TJ.
Yeah. Right.
And he comes to spaces and he said, he doesn't have to say who he is. You know who he is from Jump Street,
Yeah.
Whereas I think we, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we, not that we struggled, but we weren't as forthcoming in the very beginning. We weren't putting our relationships out there. We weren't putting out us as who we were authentically, that people around us knew. But I think, going through this journey of self-exploration and just fully engulfing and enveloping who we were was something that, I leaned on you for a lot.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I don't think I could have done it by myself. You know what I mean? I think we all need people in our lives that support us, that lift us up, and, people that you can talk to, because it's so important to have someone who's going through a similar situation that you are, to be able to speak to that person, because they fully understand and get where you're coming from. You and Brian got married a little after Ronald and I got married, but you and Brian have been together a lot longer than Ronald and I have been together. But that's not something that you publicly talked about. And you really didn't start really publicly talking about this until maybe about the end of around 2021, maybe, you know what I mean? And like I said, the people around us knew, and people that we let in the peripheral knew, but it wasn't like public knowledge. And like now, it's not even a thing. You know what I mean? It's like, this is who I am, this is who I'm with, this is the life that I live, and it's either you're a part of it, you accept it, or you're not. You know what I mean? But our friendship, our relationship has really helped me in my journey in how I show up in the world. You know,
Wow.
um, yeah. I don't know if I've actually articulated it
I
that
don't
way
think
to you,
so. I'm just like, what?
but no, no. Listen, the one thing I know um, is that no one can do this journey that we call life alone.
Mhm. Right.
Everywhere that you go, everything that you do, someone else is there with you for the ride. You
Yeah.
might not see it that way, or they might not see it that way, but that's exactly what they're there for. Like, I believe that people are put into your life for a reason. They are there to help you navigate certain parts of your life. Some people will stay for the rest of that journey. Some people will get off that train at the next stop, and that's okay. You know,
Right.
I've experienced all of those things, but I know for a fact that you're one of those that got on this train, and we're just going to go until you know one of us will know more. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this is
Right.
a friendship that's going to go till the end.
Right.
Um, but in me doing this show, this is what I want people to see. I want them to know that there's hope, especially for those that are coming from the Caribbean. You know, I think that there's not a lot of resources. I mean, there are resources there, but I think a lot of people aren't talking about it as much. And I feel as though us having these conversations and talking about it allows people and gives people um, the right to talk about it even more and to be more open about it and to say, hey, look, you know what? I am here.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere, and this is who I am, and this is my life. Um, and no one should ever dictate how you can and should live your life. You know what I mean?
Correct.
As a quote unquote heterosexual person, no one's dictating you, oh, well, this is how you have to show up. This is who you have to be with. It's just like, okay, well, that's who you are, and this is who you choose to be with. Okay, no big deal. I'm living my life. I'm living my life. We're living our life, you know?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree with that. I'm actually really grateful that you shared that with me. I had no idea that that's how you felt. I mean, I know for myself that having the space with you guys has really been helpful for me as far as expression, feeling heard, feeling like what I had to say and what I brought to the table was it was. I always thought it mattered. I just never. I was just never in a space with people where they demonstrated that it mattered to them as well. And I have to say that a lot of the stuff that we did, messing around with photos and stuff, really helped me kind of transgress some of the artificial boundaries that I had in place for my life, because it was okay for me to show up in academic spaces as my full self, because I could always rely on feeling competent and top notch when it came to intellectual discourse. It was the social spaces that were more of a challenge. And so as
Mm-hmm.
we began to be more public, like with the show and doing photos with one another and stuff like that, and publishing it, I was very apprehensive about that at first, because I didn't feel great about my physique, because I won't say my face, because I've always been pretty. I'm just saying, like, it was the rest of me that I always was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I wish I could just kind of,
No,
that kind of stuff. And it's so crazy to know better, to have like the thought that this is all artificial, it's all ridiculous. Like, these are parameters set in place by people who don't necessarily live by them themselves. And so, like, that being a large person is fine. It's just the signaling that you get externally that kind of reinforces a different message and makes you want to, fit within that, just for peace of mind and just for like
mm-hmm.
knowing that there will be space for you wherever you go. And so it's like I was constantly in this tug of war between what I knew to be true intellectually and how I felt about it in my body. And
Yeah.
so doing the photo stuff kind of really helped with that, because I was able to see how I could be um, beautiful in total and be
Yeah.
admired, and like put myself in positions where people could possibly have something negative to say and really just not giving a shit. Like, so I'm really thankful for that, because it sounds so trivial, but it really made a huge difference in the way that I conceptualize the total package of who I am as a person and like what I have to offer, regardless of what I look like. So it was like through accessing something trivial that most people take for granted helped me walk into a space where I felt okay about doing things that I once probably would have avoided at all costs.
So listen, I'm glad you brought up that. I don't think it was trivial. And for those that are watching, you'll see the images I'm going to put up on the side as he was talking and as I'm talking in regards to that photo shoot that Rice was talking about. So, along that journey and doing the photographs, because also you're a photographer as well. And if you haven't seen, I'm not even sure which one's going to air first, but the episode with Rex on Take Two, that really talks a little bit more about the photography. But I want to talk about it a little bit here because I think it's really important, and it's something that's key to you just being comfortable with yourself. So, you were taking photographs of yourself, but then I remember, I believe it was 2022 last summer when we decided we were going to do a big photo shoot in New York. It was myself, you, Ronald, and Brian. We were all four of us. And then also I had a client that was me photographing. So we rented a studio for a full day in Brooklyn. And, one of the things that I said I wanted to do is I wanted to photograph you. And I told you the rooms, because I had booked 2 rooms. One was just a regular, like a LED light room, which is more futuristic type of thing. And then I wanted to do a more intimate photo shoot in what was called the rain room. Now, and you had full autonomy as far as what you were going to wear and stuff like that, but I was going to photograph you.
Right.
And I don't think you had let anyone photograph you up until that point. And
I still haven't.
And what was so important about that was that there was a level of trust that was between the two of us. Because one, I had never really let other people photograph me as well. People that follow me on Instagram, not really within last year, but from like 2018 till 2023, really, my Instagram page was focused on me doing my own photography and publishing like that type of like editorial and type of stuff, self-portrait stuff. But we both trusted each other enough to say, you know what, I'm going to let you do what you do, but in a very vulnerable state. Now, here's the thing. We didn't really talk about it in those terms. We just knew that we trusted each other and that we were going to allow each other to photograph one another in a way that was very different than what we were accustomed to.
Right.
And I think for you, it was even more challenging because of a lot of the things that you were dealing with internally in regards to body image, body positivity. And, it's one of the things you talk about, you're so adamant about, but when it came to you, it was still very difficult and hard for you to grasp. So one, you giving me your trust and faith to do that was a huge step, and something I didn't take lightly, because I knew that, if I didn't get this right, not only would you not trust me, but you wouldn't trust anyone else to do it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And how you show up.
It was scary for me.
But listen, how you showed up in these photos was amazing. You came off strong. You came off positive. You came off, I have to say, you came off sexy. You felt comfortable. It shows on screen, despite the fact that you might have been nervous to a certain degree. I think you trust the process, you trust me, and you allowed me to bring out what I think everyone else saw in you that you couldn't see in yourself.
I was only scared until you started. Once I entered the space and you started, because I felt so comfortable with you and I was familiar with you, and I knew that. I think the most important thing for me was I knew that you weren't trying to embarrass me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People can be mean and I'm not typically susceptible to embarrassment, right? And so, because I very rarely get embarrassed. just in general, not because I'm so special, but just because I just don't even allow access to embarrassment. And so this could have potentially been embarrassing for me. but I could just feel that wasn't your objective. Like you were really trying to help, and you were like really trying to help me put out or put together something that I could be proud of. And so I think the fear kind of went away.
Well, not so much. I wanted you to be proud of what we put out, but I wanted you to be proud of who you were. And because and a lot of this goes back to our personal and private conversations about, where we feel as though we fit in within the whole context of the LGBTQIA plus community. Because, this is kind of like a side note, but a lot of people in the community kind of would even look down on us as individuals because of the fact that we took so long to identify as that. That is definitely a thing,
Yeah, but that's not our generation, so
right. But no, it was really important for me to get it right. And to be honest with you, it was so easy because the one thing I told myself was like, I'm not going to treat you any different than I treat any other client of mine, because ultimately what I'm always trying to do with anyone that I work with is for them to feel their most comfortable and their best self when they're in front of that lens.
Right.
And I mean, I remember I took, 1 or 2 photographs, and then like I always do with all my clients, I show them a photo. And the reason why I do that is so that the comfort level can come down. Like, because a lot of times in the very beginning, when you just start to take those first few shots, there's a level of anxiety that the person who's being photographed has. I know it because I've been doing this for a long time.
Right.
And then one way to calm and ease people's nerves is for them to see themselves. And always, without fail, the comment that I get is, "Oh my God, that's me. I didn't realize I could look that way."
Right, exactly.
And this is why I tell people, people will say, "Oh, I'm not photogenic." No, it has nothing to do with you not being photogenic. It's about the person who is capturing you knowing how to capture your features and making you feel comfortable. So one, me understanding and studying who you are as a person and knowing what makes you comfortable, and then photographing and then just kind of showing you, because that brought the anxiety down, tremendously. And then all of a sudden it was like a light turned on. It was like boom, boom, boom. It was like,
okay, it was a lot of fun.
It was Rex the model. And then you introduce colored lights and you introduce water and you're getting wet and this and that. It was an amazing photo shoot. And actually this was something that I've been wanting to do, like this type of water photo shoot, for many years. And the opportunity arose because actually I was supposed to shoot some other clients a year before in that particular room, but the pipe had burst about 2 weeks before, so I had to switch it. So that's why I never had a chance to do it. But getting back to the topic at hand.
I think that's part of the topic at hand, right? Because we were talking about what it means to feel like you have a safe space, a place to exist, a place for the truest version of you to flourish and grow. And I think that not only are you doing that here with this show, but like you do that in real life with the people who know you. And so I think that you have kind of come into being like a beautiful example of what it means to provide that space for people. So
I constantly look back and hope that that's what is being portrayed. I never imagined this life for myself. I never would have thought that years ago I would be sitting here having these conversations publicly about who I am, my sexuality. I talked about it in the episode that I recorded earlier in the season, and I'm going to continue to talk about topics that are relevant to me and how I show up in the world. I think that's really, really important. My experience, because I think it's actually really unique. It's not unique in a way that it's never happened before. But you don't hear too many stories about people letting people in such later on in life. Like, someone could say, "Oh, well, you were having your midlife crisis, and your midlife crisis was, quote unquote, coming out the closet." And I'm like, no. I just, I think everything happens in its own time, and this was just the time that it was supposed to happen for me. Just like,
Yeah.
it happened for you at a later stage in life. And I want you to talk about the story of you, having kids, being married before, and then realizing that that's not your, being married to a woman was not your true authentic life. Tell that story, because I think that, that's also very helpful for people out there that are dealing with this. The DL community is a whole thing.
Yeah,
Not
it's
saying that,
absolutely a whole thing.
it is a whole thing, and it's a hot topic. And but talk about your journey with respects to, being married, having kids, and then meeting your soulmate. And actually, you've known Brian for a very long time, but really realizing that that was a person you were meant to be. So tell, if you don't mind, tell that story.
I think I always sort of knew he was the person to some degree, maybe not fully, but to some degree I had suspicion. But I think that initially I was really just trying to survive and do what I thought was like the right thing to do. Like I really didn't feel like I don't feel like doing anything else other than what I did, which is getting married and having kids and all the things that everybody says that they want. I don't think I had access to anything but that. Right, my life, I didn't allow myself to imagine a possibility beyond that because the alternative in my mind was the equivalent of like not existing at all. Right,
Mm,
because you believe that it's instant rejection from everybody that knows you. And so I just kind of, and it wasn't terrible, right? Because it's like, it's not like I had no attraction to the person I was with. Um, it just wasn't, I just knew that I didn't feel like I thought I should feel in that space. So, it was attraction, but to a much lesser degree than what I have currently. And so that's just the reality of the situation. I think
mm,
that having kids was unexpected, but it was one of the that's one thing I definitely don't regret. So like when I look back on that time in my life, I think about how I didn't necessarily feel like I had all the freedom to be fully me like I wanted to. But I think if anybody who knew me then probably assumed that I was gay or something, regardless of the fact that I had a wife and kids. I think that I thought I was doing a great job at hiding it, regardless of what the reality what the reality of that was. And so once that ended, and I was, I released myself from that sort of self confinement or self imprisonment of identity and like expression. It just really made a difference in how I saw life, what I thought was available to me. It was almost like, that feeling when you get a new credit card and the possibilities are endless. You can just go to the store. When you walk through the door, there's nothing in the store that you can't have within reason. And you can walk out with it, even if you don't really have any money. That was sort of like, that sounds so crazy, but that's sort of how I felt. Like, I felt like I was given an unlimited line of credit and I could do whatever I wanted to do.
but yeah, I totally get that. And I think there's a level of bravery also involved in that, to be able to say, what, that was not my authentic self, this is who I really am. And
Yeah.
to, you know the journey of you and Brian has been beautiful, and I truly appreciate the friendship that we have, and I'm able to see um that love and that partnership that you guys have. Um, Tell the story of, because I know you guys have known each other for a long time. So tell that story really quickly, because I think that's also an important part of who you are and who
I
you
met
guys are.
Brian in the 11th grade in high school. He sat in front of me in physics class, and we were instant friends. And the first shit, 8 to 10 years of our relationship, we were just friends, like really just friends. And I just knew that he was somebody that I could be around all the time, and it'd be easy, and it'd be a good time, and it'd be great. And I didn't really know him in a romantic capacity then, but as time progressed and my credit card for life was unlocked, and there was the potential to have whatever I wanted, then we kind of just moved into that. And that's all I don't think, the crazy thing is, once like we were actually, in a relationship together, I don't think people were surprised. Like, I remember telling my family, and they were just like, oh, like,
Okay.
no, my brother was like, you made it seem like you were getting ready to give us some news or something. Like, what is this? Like, like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? He took it seriously, but he was just like, I thought you were going to say you were sick, or, you were being all serious about it. And I'm just like, it was like the most anticlimactic announcement I think I've ever made in my life. Like, people were just like, okay.
Okay. Yeah. And that's the funny thing. Like, that's where our stories are so similar, because it's like, I think we built up in our heads what we thought that people's reactions were going to be, and it really wasn't what we had it built up. It was
For
very
you though, because I would think that people would have been like super shocked by you, because like me, I feel like I have some effeminate ways in general. Like, they're probably more exaggerated now because I don't actively work to camouflage it in ways that I did before. But you just are kind of naturally, you kind of naturally give Butch Queen anyway. So like, I just am so like, I'm surprised that people weren't more shocked by you.
So I have to admit, I would say I think anyone that is quote unquote in the closet or just not really living their life authentically, you do a lot of things to counteract, because you don't want anyone to know. It's like, well, can they see it on me? Can they smell it on me? Like, am I giving off like quote unquote gay vibes?
Yeah,
Whatever
only
that
the
is.
right people know, child.
Yeah. But it's like, I did a lot of things to just make sure that I fit into the quote unquote norm of heterosexual society and being a man, and, walking up straight, and talking a certain way. And I mean, that when we get around, we kiki and have a good time. And we, as they would say, that we would let our hair down and just have, we're just being ourselves. We don't have to worry about, because I think even still that, we live our lives authentically. When you come in certain spaces, we still try to make other people feel comfortable to a certain degree. So we, you act, not that you act a certain way that's not authentic to you, but you kind of tone it down a little bit. You know what I mean?
I don't even know if it's that. Like, I like to think of it as, you act appropriate for the occasion. And
Yes.
that doesn't mean that I'm any less me than I am, but like, depends on the capacity that I'm acting in. I'm not gonna show up to instruct my class talking to them the way that I talk to you, because that's not with that group of people, that's not the most effective means of communication.
And it's not
like,
appropriate. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
get that.
because I say, yeah,
We say the worst things.
the worst
but
things.
Though, that's what real friendship is, knowing that you're in that safe space that you can say things and not worried about one being criticized, not being judged. That's the one thing I will say that I really appreciate about our friendship, and even like the friendship that we have with TJ. Like, we can, because we have our group chat and we talk every day. It's an everyday thing, and we can say the worst things to each other. We can crack on each other, and no one's offended, because we know that it's not malicious and it's not to demean anyone, but this is just how we communicate and we show love to one another. You know what I mean? And even like, you guys will crack on me, like the paw, like the old man jokes and like whatever. Like, I take that as a badge of honor. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
not everybody gets to make it to this ripe old age. Not that I'm
right.
very old, but you know what I mean. Like
I mean,
so,
it's not that you're not just like 2 years older than me or some shit. So.
that. But you know, and I've just always loved that between us. And like I said, going back to us going through this journey together, it's been really important for me. And you know, I love how we show up in spaces and how we allow people to show up in our lives. And you know, it's been very eye-opening, very refreshing,
Yeah,
and it's made this journey so much easier
I agree.
than I ever thought it could have been.
Yeah.
So for that, I thank you again.
Yes, I listen. I think that it goes both ways. So I don't know that I need any thanks. I just know that anything that I have been or given to you, you've done the same. So it is what it is. I'm grateful for the whole thing. I think that I got a lot of what I missed out on as a young person. I always wonder why I didn't have like super close friends when I was a young person. I really think that that just boils down to an inability to connect with myself. So like I wasn't my own friend like then during that time. So how could I extend that sort of open invitation to have like those kind of deep rooted connections with people? So
I totally understand that.
yeah.
So before we wrap this thing up, I want to kind of bring it back to the PhD and the studies because I think that what you're doing is amazing. You know, to tackle this because I don't know anyone else who, you know, I'm not in that field of academia, but I don't know a lot of people that are actually studying like really micro focusing on LGBTQIA plus um, studies, and then with a concentration on one fat bodies, but then also Caribbean literature and just understanding what it is to be in a Caribbean community and be a part
Yeah.
of that community. You
Mm.
know, um, just kind of wrap up in regards to that and what you intend to do with it.
Well, what I will say is that I am by no means an expert in the space. I feel like I still have a lot to learn. I'm going to always be learning. But I am thankful that some of the best scholars in Caribbean literature have been a force in my academic journey. My dissertation advisor is from the Caribbean, and so is the one of my other professors. They're both from the Caribbean, and they both have been instrumental in like making sure I was well read, that I had adequate information. And these aren't like people who are like were living here in the States and for most of their lives. These are people who lived in the Caribbean for most of their lives and maybe have been here for maybe however long, and they have really done a great job with like correcting me when I'm wrong, keeping me from putting an African American reading onto lives and bodies that don't exist in that space or that reality. And so it's really been a journey for me. I continue to want to do the work of uncovering what the implications of the way that fat bodies are represented in all literature, but specifically in Caribbean literature. And in so I just want to think about how there are recently, I think within the past 3 years, there was a scholar who did a lot of this work on Black bodies in general, like through history, to take a historical approach to understanding Black bodies and Black beauty standards, but it's all done from the perspective of a woman. And so, like I mentioned earlier, there's very little scholarship around men's bodies, let alone fat men's bodies, fat Black men's bodies. And so I feel like my scholarship will be a concerted effort and attempt to add a contribution to that space.
I love it. And, you know, one thing to note for those that watched the entire episode and then also watched the Take Two episode, not only are you doing it through literature, but you're also doing it through your photography, and that's
Correct.
where that bridge really, really lies. And
Yeah.
you're doing some amazing things. So if you have the chance, please go and visit Rex on Rags and Pieces Mag. That is his Instagram handle. You can definitely see his work there. It's amazing body of work. Also, Rex, tell them where they can find you on social media and then also on your website.
Okay, so like you said, I'm at Rags and Pieces Mag on Instagram, and anything else I'm at is Rex D. My website is ragsandpiecesmag.com, and all of my stuff is available, public. You can take a look, say hi, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, this has been amazing. I love having my guests on. I love speaking with them, but this one is much more personal to me, and I really appreciate the time that you took out of your day to do this. I love you, and I wouldn't have anyone else on but you. I said to you last week, I was like, sir, haven't been on yet. Why haven't you been on?"
I know. Listen, all you had to do was tell me. I'm always available, man. I
I
love you
know,
right
I
back.
know, I
Yes.
know. But thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to bringing you another guest next week. But then also, in addition to that, I'm going to really take a few episodes and just focus on specific topics where I'm just going to talk. So if you've got comments or you have topics that you want me to talk about, definitely send me a text a DM on my Instagram. It's constantly changing for me. It's constantly underscore changing the number 4 in me on Instagram. Or you can leave a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. I thank you guys for watching. And until then, take care of yourself and maintain a safe space. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for watching this show on Indecent Media. Now, if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification button so that you can get notified when we drop new videos every week. See you guys next time.